Hey, what's going on everyone? Sam here from Lake Pro Tackle. Guys, today's video, we're gonna be running over some of the biggest mistakes anglers use when they're shallow cranking. You know, right now here in Texas, we are in the pre-spawn time. Spawn time's right around the corner, and shallow cranking is one of my favorite techniques all year long to catch fish. You know, catching fish on a shallow crankbait, you know, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, a lot of different crankbaits to choose from, whether it's one with rattles, a silent one, a balsa wood crankbait. There's a lot of different techniques and different ways you can get these fish to eat, and a lot of people don't know a lot of these specific techniques that will get you a whole lot more bites as opposed to just throwing down the bank and not really covering a lot of water effectively. And when I am shallow cranking, I do like to cover a lot of water. I like to speed crank through it, but you know, there are a few tips and tricks that I know to get you more bites on the water. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. Guys, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, as well as follow our social media at Lake Pro Tackle on Instagram and Facebook. So I've got a few tips and tricks here, some big mistakes that people use on the water, and we're gonna talk about how to get more bites. So first off, one of the biggest issues that I see with a lot of anglers on the water is that their line size is not the line size that they need. So a lot of the time when I first started fishing, you know, I would put on 15 pounds, 17 pounds, because that's just what everyone told me to start with. You know, 15 to 17 pounds, you can't really break it on a lot of things. Even if I set the hook really hard into like a rock or a stump, that line's not gonna break. I don't have to worry about it. So for the longest time, I had some pretty thick line on, pretty heavy line on when I was throwing my crankbaits. Once I started to expand my arsenal into more technique-specific rods, you know, I got more combos, got a couple more other different things that I could experiment with. Then I started playing with some lighter line. Now it might sound trivial to you if you've been fishing for a while, but you know, right here, this is where it all starts. Having the right line size for your crankbait and for your technique is a huge thing. Now, if you are throwing that 15 to 12 pound line, you can still get bit, don't get me wrong. But when I say you'll get a lot more bites on lighter line, I'm not kidding, guys. The big difference for me, I was on a tournament on Lake Lewisville, and if you fished Lake Lewisville in the Metroplex, or really any Metroplex lake in DFW, you know shallow cranking is one of the most effective techniques out there to just get a lot of bites. It generates a ton of bites, those fish relate to the bank, and once I made the switch from 15 and 12 pound line down to 10 and even 8 pound line, my bites went through the roof. And I'm telling you, right now, this is one of my favorite lines. This is the Seagar InvisX in 10 pound. And this is on around 80% of my cranking rods or cranking reels right now. So 10 pound line is pretty much my standard. I've got some on 12, and that's gonna be like my deep cranks, you know, around my 5 to 6 XDs. And then if I go even more specific with my crankbait and I get a lighter style crankbait like a Shad Rap, I'm gonna be throwing even an 8 pound line. And sometimes I'll throw that Shad Rap on a spinning rod, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're gonna be focusing on bait casters. We're gonna be talking about your more traditional crankbaits like your square bills, your flat-sided crankbaits, as well as a super awesome crankbait, which I really love, and this is the Megabass S-Crank. And we'll get into these different crankbaits, different styles of cranking a little bit later in the video. Now, going back onto the line here, one of the biggest things that affects the action of the baits is gonna be your line size. So if you're throwing like a traditional square bill, having a thicker line size gets in the way of the action of this bait. It doesn't allow this bait to naturally move the way it wants to move. It really tightens up that action a lot. And now, tighter action might be good in some instances, but however, I would argue that having the natural movement of the bait, the way it was supposed to be designed and fished on, is gonna be much more effective to you. Now, the second thing that the line diameter and line size affects is gonna be the depth of which your crankbait can run. Now, for example, I've done several tests with several different crankbaits on different line sizes, and I mean, hands down, almost every crankbait will run deeper with a thinner line diameter. And this 10 pound test here, it's gonna get the job done. It's gonna get your bait down there, and you're not gonna have any issues with that bait not running right. So the two things with line size, again, is gonna be the action of the bait and the depth at which it runs. So these are two major things when it comes to specifically targeting fish, especially if they're set up a little weird or very specific on different cover. If they're set up deeper on a drop on a bank, you definitely wanna have that thinner line diameter. It's gonna let it fall, or it's gonna let it dive down much faster as opposed to that thicker line. If they're really high up in the water column, you know, you can definitely get away with a thicker line. You can play with that, but that all comes with more experience on the water. So next up, we're gonna be talking about one of the biggest things I see anglers doing. I captain high schoolers. I've done it. This is my 3rd year now. I went through the college series, went through the high school series here in Texas. And one of the biggest things I see with people working their baits down the bank is that they don't set up correctly on the bank a lot of the times. Now, positioning can be a huge thing, especially all across the country. You get in some of your more pressured areas and areas where patterning fish is a major player. It's not just the bait, but it's how those fish set up on a given day. A lot of the times I see anglers as they're paralleling down the bank. Let's say they're paralleling down this way, right? A lot of them will set up facing the bank and casting directly at the bank. Now, if you think about it this way, casting directly at the bank, you're going to be covering less water, but you're going to be making more casts, and it can be effective. However, a lot of people, a lot of anglers, especially if they're new to cranking, shallow cranking, and aren't effective at it, they go on a pretty high speed on their trolling motor and they cast every, let's call it 10 to 20 foot. So if it's 2 anglers on that boat, you know, you might be able to hit those gaps between each other, but if it's 1 angler on the boat, it's really hard to slow down and effectively fish that bank if you're casting directly at the bank in a perpendicular way. So if this is the bank and the angler's setting up here and they're casting like this, they're gonna go down, 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 and they don't cover a lot of that bank. So the way I like to bank fish, especially with shallow cranking, is setting up on that bank perpendicular and deciding exactly where I want to make my casts. So if this is the bank again, guys, I'm gonna be setting up off the bank and I'm gonna be perpendicularly casting across to that bank. So this is gonna be my cast, or this is gonna be my cast directly at the bank at an angle, or if I find that exact depth range that those fish are in, I'm gonna be casting exactly in that perpendicular line to the bank. So if they're 20 foot off the bank, I'm gonna be casting 20 foot off the bank with my crankbait all the way down. I'm gonna get my head of the trolling motor where I'm sitting 20 foot off the bank, and I'm gonna make that same cast. Now, a lot of the times fish move, especially right now in the springtime in the pre-spawn and the spawn, they can be anywhere from 1 foot all the way out to 10 foot. So that's when I'm gonna make those triangle casts, and I'm gonna find exactly what depth range they're in and effectively cover all these depth ranges as I cast. So that is number 2 when it comes to those biggest mistakes that people make on the water. Now, number 3, I'm gonna be talking about some hardware. When it comes to rods and reels, I prefer a 7 foot to 7'3" rod, and I'm gonna be talking about these rods right here. These are some of my favorite rods, especially at the price point. They've got an amazing warranty. These guys right here are the 13 Fishing Fate Blacks. Now these guys come in at $89.99, so it's under $100 rod, guys. This one is super awesome. Tim and I have sold countless numbers of these. We've had to special order a bunch of these here in the store to get more in, because people absolutely love these. Our customers love these. They have a specific line that are crankbait models. They've got a really great moderate action. They have a 7 foot and a 7'3". And you can see here, this is going to be a medium moderate action. It is a very flexy rod, great for crankbaits in shallow water. They're pretty fast action as well, so when you do get that bite, you can set that hook really fast, keep that fish pinned, and you know, just for this video here, for those of you watching, I'm going to take 15% off if you order one of these rods. Use code FateYT, so like Fate Black, FateYT, and you'll get 15% off the Fate Black rods here. So just for those of you who are watching this video, guys, if you want to share this video, we'd really appreciate it. Let your friends and family know that we've got these 15% off just for watching this, and we'll probably sprinkle in a few more sales here and there because we really love the support on this channel here. We really want to help a lot of people catch the biggest fish of their life and put more fish in their boat. So I'm going to be moving on here to the reels actually. So with a reel, a lot of the times, a lot of people say you got to have a slow gear ratio reel, like a 6-speed or a 5-speed. When I'm shallow cranking, guys, I'm trying to burn down the bank, try to find where those fish are at, and fishing a 7-speed reel. The Corrado MGL 150 is one of my favorite reels. A 7-speed is going to be a great middle of the road. I can slow down if I need to, and I can speed it up if I need to. And that's another thing. A lot of people don't know whether to start with a faster retrieve or start with a slower retrieve. You know, either one. I prefer going fast until I get that reaction bite, and most of these bites are going to be reaction bites. You know, slow cranking, any cranking in general really, you're not going after hunger bites most of the time, you're making them react to it. So having that 7-speed reel, I can speed it up if I need to go really fast and pause it and jerk it and do all that to make them react, or I can slow down, try to cover water more effectively, and that 7-speed works perfect for me. Again, check out this Fate Black Series, guys. Save 15% off with that code. Next up, we're going to be talking about the hardware on these baits. Now, a lot of baits come with pretty good hardware. You know, you get your higher end baits like this Jackal or this S-Crank by Megabass, and they've got great stock hooks. Out of the package, you can fish them. You don't have to do anything to them. When it comes to certain bait companies, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus. It's best if you upgrade your hooks. Now, I prefer a little thinner wire hooks when it comes to fighting these fish. You know, I've got 10-pound line on, so I don't want to overpower that hook. I don't want to put too much pressure on it, so I'm going to be usually throwing a little bit thinner wire hook. I'm going to be throwing a owner most of the time. It's going to be the short shank. It's going to be great for getting through cover, whether it's timber, rocks, or anything like that. That short shank really allows me to fish it effectively through cover. But we have several hooks here in the store. Again, I'm going to link everything that I talk about and recommend down in the description. So go check that out. We've got all those links set up for you. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about the favorite crankbaits that I like to use, kind of the styles, and some different companies here. First up, I'm going to be talking about the Jackal Bling 55. This guy here has been in my arsenal since they came out a little bit ago. These guys are still relatively new. Super amazing bait. They come in a wide variety of colors. This one is one of my favorites here. This is going to be the Crawfish and the Bling 55. Great springtime color, and the great thing about this is it's got some crazy rattles in it. It's got a knocker in there as well. It's just tilted over. There we go. It's got some awesome rattles in it. This guy, you can burn it through cover. It deflects really well. And that flat side crankbait action is going to get a lot of bites as well, especially in pressured locations in this DFW Metroplex. Let's say you're fishing on Gunnersville, Chickamauga, Tennessee River. People are throwing crankbaits. Got to separate yourself a little bit. Flat side crankbaits are amazing at that to get a little more finicky fish to eat. So this Bling 55, again, you can burn it. Great stock hooks. You can slow it down. Crawl through cover super well. Next up is going to be the Megabass S-Crank. I'm still pretty new to this one. It's been a very effective bait for me. This S-Crank here is going to be a little bit different from your traditional square bill. It does have a square bill, so it does have a lot of head action on it. So that head's going to move around, that tail's going to move around. That bait is really great at getting reaction strikes. Now, the body of this bait is going to be what sets it apart from your traditional square bills. The body of this bait is a little more rounded, a little taller, so it's going to have a little more of a shad profile. It's got a very tall profile on it. The bill on it is very strong. I haven't broken any bills. The hardware on it is very good as well. It comes stock with some pretty stout hooks. Most of the time, I won't change those out. If I do get in a situation where there's a little grass, I have to rip it through, I will switch those hooks out to a little bit thinner wire hooks. But this bait here has an amazing roll action. This thing looks super amazing in the water, and if you haven't bought one, you need to check them out because this S-Crank here, I guarantee you, you will have fun throwing it. It is a great wintertime bait as well, especially for that around 3 to 6 foot range. This one here, it's going to dive down to a maximum of 1.5 meters, which is a couple in that depth range to that 3 to 6 foot as well. So last crankbait that I'm going to talk about here, this one here is made by Armstrong Outfitters. They're an exclusive crankbait that you can only get at lakeprotackle.com or coming in store. Kirk had these done up with the help of one of our lake pros. And our lake pros, if you don't know already, they get us fishing reports that you can view online for free at lakeprotackle.com. It's on the homepage. You can click right there. And if you're going out in the water and haven't been in a while, more than likely we've got a fishing report for you with current water temps, current water clarity, as well as some baits and some techniques that might help you narrow down where those fish are at. But this guy here is called Lake Pro Shad, again, by Kirk Armstrong with Armstrong Outfitters Tackle. This crankbait here is super amazing. It was made for Lake Texoma, but I'm gonna be honest, I haven't seen a better shad representation than this crankbait here. These are all hand painted. They've got an awesome clear coat on them. You're not gonna chip that paint off, and it's got a single rattle in it. Amazing for burning down the bank, burning down little bluff areas. This crankbait here is gonna be a traditional square bill, has mustad hooks right out of the package on it. So go check this one out, lakeprotackle.com. Again, gonna be linked below. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Shallow cranking is gonna get hot, hot, hot here in just a little bit. Again, save 15% off for watching this video on these Fate Black Series rods. And we will catch you next time. Leave a like on the video. We'll see you next time.